GCSE poetry, war and conflict, tissue, and poems to compare it to. Here is the poem reading. Paper that lets the light shine through. This is what could alter things. Paper thinned by age or touching. The kind you find in well-used books. The back of the Quran, where a hand has written in the names and histories, who was born to whom, the height and weight, who died where and now, on which sepia date, pages smoothed and stroked and turned transparent with attention. If buildings were paper, I might feel their drift, see how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. Maps too, the sun shines through their borderlines, the marks that rivers make, road rail tracks, mountain folds. Fine slips from grocery shops that say how much was sold and what was paid by credit card might fly our lives like paper kites. An architect could use all this, place layer over layer, luminous script over numbers over line, and never wish to build again with brick or block, but let the daylight break through the capitals and monoliths. Through the shapes that pride can make, find a way to trace a grand design with living tissue, raise a structure never meant to last, or paper smoothed and stroked and thinned to be transparent, turned into your skin. So here is a brief summary of this poem if you didn't quite understand the meaning. Tissue paper is used as an extended metaphor in this poem for life, to show that although fragile, humans have a large amount of power and creativity to change things. The synopsis. So tissue paper is described to be fragile and easily affected by aging, working and handling. Paper is then attributed to the significance of the Quran. Maps and buildings are then included in the extended metaphor, and Darker claims that an architect could use the tissue to build with and never need to use brick again. Now this is possibly an example of a juxtapositional idea in which tissue can't be used to make something that's supposed to be strong. Tissue is then finally likened to skin. So here is the annotated poem. So we begin by looking at the height and weight, who died where and how, on which sepia date, pages smoothed. Now this is asyndetic listing, and this is used in this instance to emphasize the significance of the Quran on humanity. Maps too. Now this short, simple declarative creates a blunt tone to the poem and really contrasts the lengthy lines that sometimes go over 3 separate lines for one sentence. There is alliteration in roads, rail tracks, and it's quite harsh consonants, whereas the fact that they are on 2 separate lines show distance. Might fly our lives like paper kites. This metaphor criticizes the significance humanity places on money. Let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths. This metaphor demonstrates the overwhelming power of daylight, something people can't control. With living tissue. Now this is a turning point here, where it's revealed that the poem is in fact about living flesh rather than the materialistic tissue. And it's further reinforced by the final line, turned into your skin, which is left separate to make clear to the reader that they are meant to consider the meaning of the poem in relation to their own life. So let's look at poet context. The poet's name is Imtaz Darker. From 1954 he was born to present. He was born in Pakistan but grew up in Glasgow and describes herself as Scottish Pakistani Muslim Calvinist. Most of her poetry concentrates on identity and home, which is significant given her ability to reconcile her conflicting identities, as well as dividing her time between Wales, India and London. So let's look at structure and form essay points. So in terms of form, the poem takes the form of an allegory, which has hidden meanings of revealing the transience of life. This could cause the reader to let go of a materialistic life and instead focus on the people around them and God. It ends with the direct address of your skin to cement this message in the reader. And I think this is really achieved, although this is more of a language point, by the extended metaphor of tissue. For this could both be interpreted dually as something materialistic, but also as something natural and human. Now, structure points. First of all, these stanza lengths are all written in quatrains, which are 4 lines. And this consistent structure shows how restrictive human power and control can be. The final line is only a single line to emphasize and isolate its meaning. This shows how it's breaking free from the controlling structure and implies that there is a need to break free from the control of human power and influence. And another structure point includes free verse and enjambment. The regularity of a fixed stanza length is undermined by the use of free verse and enjambment. These loose structural forms show that freedom can be found even within a restrictive institution. Language essay points. So here are 3, and there are 3 big ideas, so I thought they were quite valuable to put in and implement within a 3-paragraph essay. So first of all, religion. The symbol of light is a recurring theme throughout the poem, which begins with paper that lets the light shine through. Light is used as a symbol of truth and enlightenment to show how the world should be viewed. This has religious ties, as God is described often in terms of light in both Muslim and Christian holy books, and this links to Darka's upbringing. The poem could be interpreted to also be a source of enlightenment to the listener of a new way of living in which God is able to permeate through life and materialism. There is no reference to a specific God in this poem, which reflects her exploration and criticism of fundamentalism in the collection. Now, point number 2 is about society. So within the poem, Darka sets out what she believes would make an ideal society. The metaphor of buildings being able to fall away on a sigh implies that buildings should be able to change and adapt easily. Here, buildings are a symbol of permanence that should be abolished. Darka explicitly states that society should become more transparent, and this is emphasized by the harsh alliterative consonants in turned transparent. The final point about human power. Darka explores what humans deem to be truly important by what they put on paper. Religious truths, buildings, borders, money are all referenced, leading to the reader to question whether or not these are the right things to be investing interest in. Her use of symbolism in Quran, borderlines, mountain folds, fine slips, all link to human power, and also, if you think about mountains and Quran, link to religion. Finally, poems to compare it to. So here I've suggested to compare it to London. Why? Well, they contain similarities, including how they are both presenting human power as a source of oppression and suffering. And in London, it's shown as the citizens are shown to suffer in mind-forged manacles, whilst in Tissue, we looked at borderlines and acting as a symbol of division and limitation. Both poems are critical of material wealth and inequality, which is shown by the focus on charted land in London, whilst in Tissue, she shows how money is able to fly our lives like paper kites. In terms of differences, which is also valid to talk about in your comparative poetry essays, in Blake's poem about London, the narrator seems to accept the cyclical nature of corruption, which is seen in the structure of the poem. And in the final stanza, the marks of weakness referred to in the first stanza are alluded to in the final line, blights with plagues. However, Darka instead, she offers a solution to the problem of power, to not to let money fly our lives with paper kites, and that's represented by the lack of a cyclical structure. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe, and for more advice on GCSE French, Geography, RS, and of course English Literature and Language, make sure you follow @NoWaffleGCSE on Instagram. See you soon.